What is going on, New York Giant fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. Be sure to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or drops. Share this out on the podcast platform. Share it out social media. Again, do all of the good stuff. Appreciate you guys really sticking in through this dead season for the New York Football Giants. They face the Indianapolis Colts this week, their final home game of the season. I'll talk about that in a second. But I appreciate you guys sticking around because this is like the most dead season it's been probably since 2021. I mean, 2023, you had the drama with Wink. 2022, you had the playoff year. But 2021, it was just like the last 5-6 games. It was Glennon and Fromm, and it was pretty much garbage. And we're pretty much in that same predicament now. So as far as the rundown of the show, it's the usual rundown, plus we do have Derek Larger in the second half of the show. He was on with us the last time we faced the Colts, and you know what's funny is I find this really interesting. First of all, I liked 2 years ago we faced the Colts and then we faced the Eagles away in the last game of the season, which again, pretty interesting. We've swapped spots with the Colts in a way. Because if you remember how many years ago, the last time we faced him, it was Jeff Saturday. He really didn't know what he was doing. He had one win. I believe it was against the Raiders. And it was just a mess of a game. It was a mess of a season for the Colts after they fired Frank Reich. So, with that, the Giants were trying to edge their way into the playoffs. With a win, they clinched the playoffs. So that was that. And now this year, it's a little bit different than that situation because the Colts have to win out plus get a number of scenarios in their favor to slide into the playoffs. But they could still get to 9-8, which is the record they had last year, which, considering some of the things that have gone wrong for the Indianapolis Colts this season, it would be good. So they will be playing for something. This is not, potentially they're gonna tank and let the Giants, win or something like that. We'll talk about maybe some of the scenarios and the theories and the fan fiction for Week 18. So the Colts have something to play for here. Anthony Richardson is questionable. We're going to get to the injury report in a second, which, obviously will determine how we go about this. But the New York Giants, I talked a lot big picture on the last recap. The Falcons recap, went into some, different things, how the Giants should attack if, they went the first pick, all these other different things. But this has a chance to be the least attended game at MetLife Stadium for a football game. And I mean NFL game, I don't mean college, I don't mean this, that, or the third. But let's think of it this way, right? The Jets' worst season at MetLife Stadium was 2-14 under Adam Gase. Luckily for them, or maybe not, but let's put it into my perspective. Luckily for them, guess what happened? COVID happened. So they had no fans in the stadium. So they weren't allowed fans in the stadium, which means that it saved them the embarrassment of 5 people showing up in the stadium. Now, the Giants do not have that luxury. There were numerous reports, that inclement weather is a reason they shut down the planes for this weekend. There was more than one scheduled, and then there was another reason that it was just an overload of orders and that they can't do it, or John Mara doesn't want people flying planes over the MetLife Stadium, whatever the case may be. Supposedly, there's supposed to be a plane over Financial Field in Week 18 that says, "Thank you, New York, for Saquon." And Saquon, around that time, should be at the rushing record, breaking Eric Dickerson's previous record. So the Giants don't have a ton of, and I know it's, again, a dead point in the season, but I'm just listing what's going to be there, right? You'll probably have empty seats because of the rain. You'll have cheap tickets. Indianapolis Colts, who the hell is driving from Indianapolis to MetLife Stadium? Who's flying? You could do that, but your team comes back next week in a pivotal game against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. So there's no reason to waste your money fly out to MetLife Stadium, and boom. So, again, the Giants are going to be the story of embarrassment at MetLife Stadium with, rain. Maybe, just maybe they'll get a plane over. Maybe someone will change their mind, or the Mother Nature will change its mind, and we'll get another show. But as of this, I mean, I don't know. The Giants do have some key players out, by the way, so let's bridge into the injury report per usual. We'll start with the Colts first, though. Mo Alley Cox, he did not practice the first 2 days, but he practiced full on Friday. He is questionable. Julius Brents, full practice throughout the week. He's on IR, questionable with a knee injury. Did not practice, limited, and then full practice for linebacker Jalen Carleys. Guard Quentin Nelson is questionable. He was limited the last 2 days in practice. You got a full practice week for Jalen Jones, who has a throat injury. I'm going to guess he probably has like strep or something. Alec Pierce, concussion, full practice throughout the week, so he's unspecified. Means he's going to play. Michael Pittman's going to play. And then Anthony Richardson is questionable. He did not practice all week. And EJ Speed did not practice the first 2 practices of the week. He is questionable, and he practiced with knee injury on Friday. So a little bit more of a light at the end of the tunnel on his behalf. So moving over to the New York Giants side, Raheem Lane, the safety, they'll probably put him on IR because I believe he tore his meniscus. So that's, even if he didn't tear his meniscus or he had some sort of an injury along those lines, I mean, shame for him, obviously. He played with the Giants in the preseason, I believe, 1 game against the Jets. But along that note, even if a slight tear of the meniscus or whatever the injury could be, a tear of something, you got 2 games left, so there's really no point to play. Malik Neighbors, he's expected to play. Toe injury is questionable. Did not practice the first 2 days of the week, limited on the last day. Micah McFadden is out, so the New York Giants will likely run Isaiah Simmons and or Ty Summers and or Darius Muasau at linebacker. Then you move to Greg Stroman, shoulder shin injury, did not practice all week. He is out. The center, John Michael Schmitz, he is out. Did not practice all week with an ankle injury. Moving forward to a guy who was on IR, and Armon Watts, questionable, full practice the last 2 days with a shoulder injury. Austin Schlodman, full practice all week with a fibula injury. He is questionable, and D. Williams is questionable. He was limited on Friday, did not practice on Thursday. He should be good. Well, I don't know if he'll be good to go. He'll probably be one of them inactives. What I am surprised about, now let's see, I could be very much wrong here, is this guy didn't show up on the injury report, and he, honestly, again, I wanted to see him in Bowen's system, but I guess, maybe with Bowen maybe not returning that they don't want to do it. So, okay, Deontay Johnson was activated, so we'll get to see him at a linebacker, hopefully. So there's that. Now, statistically, let's go to that. The Colts, they're 20th in total yards, 27th in passing offense, 8th in rushing, 21st in points. So their only real success is they're running the football. Defensively, they're 29th in total yards, 23rd against the pass, 28th against the run, and 23rd in points per game. As Derek tells us in the second half, this is a bend but don't break defense, but they've just been way too inconsistent at times, and it doesn't make sense with the bend but don't break motto because Gus Bradley is a zone type defensive coordinator, but we'll see obviously through 2 poor offenses, but they have the rushing offense, the Giants don't. We'll see who breaks through. But moving forward, they're 27th in pass percentage, 6th in run percentage, 28th in pass percentage on first down, 3rd in run percentage on first down. So, again, you could expect the run, especially in the rain. 29th in blitz and pressure percentage, and 22nd in sacks. The Giants are the 31st best offense in the NFL. They're 28th in passing yards per game. They're 21st in rushing, and they're 32nd in points per game. So the worst scoring offense in the NFL. Great. Defensively, They're 21st in total yards, 7th against the pass, 31st against the run, 25th in points per game, 7th in pass percentage, 26th in run percentage, 17th in pass percentage on first down, and 17th in run percentage on first down. So it's kind of like right down the middle. And 10th in blitz percentage, 14th in pressure percentage, and 9th in sacks. So I think while we get into things to look for, I think one of the theories I'm going to crack open here is the Giants have found their way to become one of, again, this season, it's not the first time it's happened, but one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, because you saw against the New Orleans Saints, right, where Alvin Kamara, he was a number of yards away from the 1,000 mark. And that was like one of the first games you started having those backups play, like DJ Davidson, Corey Durden, Watts wasn't playing that day. There was a couple other defensive linemen. Rodgers, I don't think, was playing yet. So you had, and I believe Watts may or may not have been activated because I know they put Casey Rodgers back on the practice squad. So your D-line room was Durden. You had Nacho. Chapman was still there. Elijah Garcia was one of the guys that was working hard. But let me see real quickly. Yeah, Watts is still on the injured reserve, so they would have to go ahead and they would have to activate him. But obviously they haven't done that yet. And we'll see, of course, who gets activated from the practice squad. The Giants really don't have any linebackers on there. Again, it's going to be Ty Summers, Muasau, Deontay Johnson, and Isaiah Simmons if they please. And, of course, maybe, I don't know, any other position that just needs depth. But so you had those type of defensive linemen, and I believe that was after the Cowboy game, which is the game where Dex had the season-ending injury. So it really wasn't that bad in that game. They didn't rush really well. It was a 14-11 score. And then you move to the next week, which was against the Ravens. They weren't, like, terrible. They could have been worse, but they were still bad against the run. Like, Lamar, I think, rushed really well. Derrick Henry didn't go off for 100, but him and Lamar still put up some nice yardage. Specifically in that game, Henry put up 67, 4.8 yards per carry, and Lamar Jackson put up 10.8. But still, I mean, you know, the Giants didn't do that terrible. But last game, the numbers went up a little bit more. I mean, 127 yards, that's not terrible again. But 94 yards, 22 carries for Bijan Robinson, 2 touchdowns. I mean, it works less and sticks out more when you have a piss-poor offense and you're at this point of the year where, like, hey, the team has given up. You know, we're playing the backups at this point, so that is that. Now, things to look for kind of rolls into that. Ground and pound from the Giants. Drew Lock will probably try to feed Malik Neighbors 31 more yards to get to that mark in his career of 1,000 yards in a rookie season, which obviously has not happened in 10 years. So, repeating of history. Now, I'm not going to say Neighbors is OBJ, but I am saying that, yeah, 10 years ago, OBJ had 1,000 despite missing a few games. I would expect them to target Daniel Bellinger a little bit because the Colts are not so good at covering the tight end. So you'll probably see him involved a little bit. Dulcich, Manhurts, probably in on the run blocking. But I expect the Giants to do a ground and pound type scenario. How much and how long that'll work, to be honest with you, I can't tell you that because I don't know. I don't think it's going to work too much because the Colts are a better team. I mean, you know, we expected Atlanta to play down the competition a little bit, and they did, but they ended up blowing us out in the long run, which is something that the Indianapolis Colts could do this game. So I would expect, you know, targets to Neighbors, targets to Robinson, Bellinger too, and maybe some shit out of the backfield to Tyrone Tracy. They're not great versus the run, the Indianapolis Colts. That's why I say ground and pound, not just the fact that Drew Lock is not a good quarterback. And Tyrone Tracy, I mean, he's not going to get to 1,000 because he's probably miles and miles away from it. But, you know, he hasn't really had a good game since Daniel Jones has not been the quarterback because the opposition is really just stacking the box. And, you really aren't scared of anybody on the outside except for Malik Neighbors. Wan'Dale Robinson is a minimal threat at best. Bellinger hasn't been used enough. Jalen Hyatt is nowhere near that. So you have that. But I think the Giants will try to do ground and pound, but I feel like they're going to get stuffed by EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, who are two of the top guys on that Indianapolis defense. Now, I think the Colts could do a good balance. I think they could definitely lean on the run here. If the Giants fail, like if they get the ball in the first possession and they don't do anything, or the second possession they don't do anything, and they start out on defense and they go to offense, whatever, I do feel that they could do some passing if they want and pretty much control the game, which is, again, the route I see this going. So you probably just give Jonathan Taylor as many reps as possible. Now, you could obviously spread the ball with Joe Flacco. He hasn't been horrible this year. He hasn't been the way he was with the Browns, but he's still a functionable quarterback. Not that I would want him next year or anything, but he's functionable. He's better than Drew Lock, so I would probably guess more of a balance with the Colts offense, but I do definitely see some sort of a ground and pound, and they'll probably put Trey Sermon in and all these other different running backs when the game basically is over. So that's pretty much my thoughts on that. And also, again, while I compile the theory of, they probably have more trust with Joe Flacco, and Anthony Richardson is still working out his kinks. He's got some maturity stuff that he's come over since the benching. But I do anticipate the Giants possibly blitzing a little bit more because, they didn't get to the quarterback too much last week. I don't think they got to the quarterback at all last week, as a matter of fact. But, Flacco is a bit of a statue in the pocket. I know Penix really isn't that different, but Flacco is towards 40 almost, if he's not 40 already. So you would expect him just to be a pocket passer when they do pass the ball on third down and all these other different scenarios. So moving over to and of course, there's always a situation where Anthony Richardson can still play, which this kind of changes the dynamic, and they probably just do a lot of running and some passing on the side. So it doesn't change drastically. But nonetheless, Joe Flacco, 1,167 yards this season, 66.5 completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, and 5 INTs. To go along with Anthony Richardson, 1,814 yards, 47.7 completion percentage. You'd like that to go up, and 8 touchdowns and 12 INTs. So they both have 6.9 yards per average throw. Jonathan Taylor got 1,129 yards on the season, 8 touchdowns, 10 plays over 20, 4.8 yards per carry, 3 fumbles, 1 of them lost. You have Anthony Richardson, who's got 7 fumbles on the year, 1 of them lost, 499 yards, almost at the 500 rushing mark, 6 touchdowns, 5 runs over 20, and 5.8 yards per carry. And behind him, you got Trey Sermon, the former 49er running back, 159 yards, 2.8 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. And Tyler Goodson, 153 yards, 4.8 yards per carry, 1 play over 20, and 1 touchdown. Here is the receiving core. Pierce looks like he's going to play, but Josh Downs is your leading receiver there. He's got 10 plays over 20, 5 touchdowns, 11.6 yards per reception, 687 yards. You have Alec Pierce, who's second, 645 yards, 5 touchdowns, 10 big plays over 20, 22.2 yards per reception, which is pretty interesting. And actually, it's a great stat to have for Alec Pierce because he's mostly seen as a slot receiver. Michael Pittman, 627 yards, 11.6 yards per reception, 2 touchdowns, 10 plays over 20. You have Adonai Mitchell. I think that might be his, because I know Derek pronounces it differently, so he might have a better read on that. But A.D. Mitchell, let's go with that, 290 yards, 4 big plays over 20. He has yet to get his first NFL touchdown, which is pretty interesting to me. And then Mo Alley Cox, Kylan Granson, and Jonathan Taylor follow up. You look at their offensive line, has been in shambles in a couple of different areas with injuries and all that sort of shit. At left tackle is Bernard Raymond, 4 penalties, 3 sacks. He's a better pass blocker. You have Quentin Nelson, the former 2018 draft pick. I think it was 4th or 5th overall, something like that. Or maybe 6th overall, because I remember they traded with the Jets. So Nelson, 10 penalties, 3 sacks. He's a better run blocker. Ryan Kelly, the center, pass blocking is his better suit. 1 penalty, 1 sack. Old friend, Mark Lewinsky. He has come back, and he's done all right. 3 penalties, 2 sacks. He's obviously a better run blocker, as we saw in Big Blue. And then the Pittsburgh draft pick from this year, Matt Gonsalves, 1 penalty, 3 sacks. He is a better run blocker statistically and also by the film. Now we take a look at the defensive side of the football for the Indianapolis Colts. You have Laiatu Latu, 31 tackles, 4 sacks, 5 TFLs, 23 quarterback pressures, which leads the team, and 12 quarterback hits. Hasn't really finished with the sacks, but maybe this game with Drew Lock being inconsistent in the pocket, he could try to get going. Then you have Kwity Paye, who was selected in the 21 draft. 37 tackles, 7 sacks, 8 TFLs, 20 quarterback pressures, and 10 quarterback hits. You move to DeForest Buckner, who they traded for from the 49ers a few short years ago. 52 tackles, 6.5 sacks, 8 TFLs, 18 quarterback pressures, and 13 quarterback hits. And then you move to the other edge, which is Deo Odeyanigbo. He had a great season for his career, 23 with 8 sacks. But this year he's got 15 quarterback hits, 7 TFLs, 28 tackles, 3 sacks only, 1 fumble recovery, 2 forced fumbles, in a total of 15 games where he started 12 of them, and 16 quarterback pressures. So it just seems like, to me, that A, they don't blitz a lot because this is a bend but don't break defense, and 2, they're struggling to finish on the sack portion, which pressures are great, and they're not even, again, great in the pressure category, but pressures are great, but sometimes you do want to finish on the quarterback and sack them. So the linebacking / secondary core, we got Zaire Franklin, who is having another terrific season, 151 tackles, 7 quarterback pressures, 2.5 sacks. In coverage, he hasn't been bad for a linebacker. He's got 2 interceptions, 81.3 completion percentage, allowed 2 touchdowns, and 96.8 passer rating. To go along with 3 QB hits, 6 tackles for loss, 5 pass deflections, and a total of 3 forced fumbles. We could quickly go to one of the guys who was on the injury report but is expected to play, in E.J. Speed. 129 tackles, 7 TFLs, 1 quarterback hit, 1 INT on the year to go along with 4 pressures. Not bad in coverage either, 1 INT. The passer rating could be a little lower, but 1 INT, 81.1 completion percentage, 1 touchdown allowed, and 96.7 passer rating. You move to the secondary, and it's a bit of a mishmash. A couple of names you haven't heard of before. Kenny Moore is probably the most familiar. You have Samuel Womack, the former 49ers pick. 5 touchdowns allowed, 2 INTs, 102.3 passer rating, with a completion percentage allowed of 57.8 and 362 yards allowed. Total of 9 pass deflections on the year. You got Jalen Jones, 1 touchdown allowed, 2 INTs, 83.1 passer rating, 709 yards, 64.8 completion percentage, to go along with 85 tackles and a forced fumble. And then finally, you look at the slot, and that is Kenny Moore, 7 PDs, fumble recovery, to go along with half a sack, 3 pressures, and coverage hasn't been bad. 63.6 completion percentage, which is pretty low for a slot corner. 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns allowed, a 71 passer rating. And one of the guys who was in free agency last year we'll go over as well. And he was signed with them on, I think it was a 1-year contract, is Julian Blackmon. 1 TFL, 1 quarterback hit, 77 tackles, half a sack, 2 INTs on the year. In coverage, 2 touchdowns allowed, 102.8 passer rating, 71 completion percentage, 349 yards allowed. So, keys to win for the New York Football Giants is, number 1, you got to create some sort of a ground and pound. The Giants will have another new starter on the offensive line. Right now, it's Jermaine O'Menor, Jake Kubis, who could also switch to right guard, Van Roten, could be Stinney at right, and then right tackle Evan Neal. So you could flip Kubis and Stinney, but you'll need to get some ground and pound going because, the secondary isn't completely awful to where you could just obliterate them. Even then, last week the Giants couldn't obliterate the poor secondary of the Atlanta Falcons. So ground and pound, get something going. Tyrone Tracy, I think, needs a really good game. Hasn't had a good game since Daniel Jones left the team and since he basically was ousted at the quarterback position, which eliminated the threat and everybody was stacking the boxes. So ground and pound, you need that. Number 2 is stop the run. It's going to be a difficult game because not only do you have a bad defensive line and, Thibodeau and Burns have to play above their part, you also have a situation where Micah McFadden's not going to play. So you have Chapman, Riley, Burns, and Tibbs. And then your linebackers are probably Ty Summers and Deontay Johnson, or Ty Summers and Darius Muasau. So that's probably your 2. I would put Andrew Phillips in the box as many times as possible to stop the run because he's really good with that. And obviously that's one of the reasons the Giants drafted him out of college, is because he could stop the run from the slot. And number 3 is, I say, collapse the pocket. I mean, this wouldn't necessarily work if you have Anthony Richardson as quarterback, but right now it looks to be Joe Flacco. You got to collapse the pocket. I mean, blitzes, that stuff we talked about and the things to look for. The Giants got to get to the quarterback. I know that there's a possibility, there's 1 or 2 starters left on the O-line from that time where Kayvon had the Snow Angels next to Nick Foles' corpse. So maybe Quentin Nelson or one of the guys on the offensive line, has a thing out for him. Though technically, him and Ryan Kelly don't match up. Against Thibodeau, it's Bernard Raymond and the right tackle Matt Gonsalves. So collapse the pocket for Joe Flacco. And again, this O-line has seen numerous changes, so they're not totally there yet. But ground and pound, stop the run, collapse the pocket. My final score prediction, by the way, I'm going to go say Colts 25 and the Giants 9. Colts 25, the Giants 9. We're going to send it over now to the discussion with Derek Larger, who covers the Indianapolis Colts for a number of outlets. Alrighty, so now we are on with Derek Larger, who covers the Indianapolis Colts for a multitude of outlets. And I guess I'll begin by asking, the Colts do have a chance to match their last year's record of 9-8 if they win this weekend against the Giants and they win against the Colts the following weekend, Week 18. But what are some things this year that maybe haven't gone right for Indianapolis?
Well, it feels like this team has found a way to take itself backwards in a way. We heard all off season from our GM, from our head coach, and everyone in the building that, once Anthony Richardson comes back and, this team is healthy again, then, this team is going to take the next step. And it feels like they haven't. In some ways, it even feels like they've taken a step back. And that's what's a little bit disheartening, because Anthony Richardson, up until a few weeks ago, wasn't necessarily, the biggest bright spot for Colts fans either. And I mean, even still now, the jury is still 50-50 on whether or not he's going to be the guy of the future. But, it felt like a lot of the year, it felt like the Colts had completely forgotten what their identity is. Like they tried to make themselves into a team that they weren't. They tried to game plan too much on defense against the pass. And it's one of those things where they needed to stop the run, but they couldn't. They tried to turn Anthony Richardson into a pocket passer when we clearly know he is not. And they abandoned their best player offensively in Jonathan Taylor, who again has had injuries this year, but when he's been healthy, at least early in the year, he wasn't quite there. But that was what we heard all offseason was, Shane Steichen took a Gardner Minshew led team to 9-8. They were this close to the playoffs. And, we have a chance to add on to that. And we didn't. And, it kind of is one of those sacrificial things where I think most of the fan base has come to term on who they want to be making decisions for this team or who they want to be leading this team going forward. But yeah, it certainly feels like we've taken a step back.
Yeah. I mean, we've taken multiple steps back, but it was funny because the last time I had you on, it was like you guys were in our position where the coach was on his way out. I mean, I remember obviously the blowout and being there, and we were kind of making our way to the playoffs, but obviously the positions and the tables have turned. Um, I saw on the injury report pretty much all week that Anthony Richardson was really not practicing. How confident are you in him playing this week, or do you think it's going to be Joe Flacco?
As of 5 minutes ago, I was thinking that it was going to be Anthony Richardson, but now I'm starting to think it might be Joe Flacco. Um, One or two of the indie reporters that cover the team were saying that keep your eye on Joe Flacco starting this week. And yeah, Anthony Richardson, he hasn't missed a lot of time outside of the first couple games that he missed earlier this year. Um and the Colts have always been very stingy about having Anthony Richardson start when he is not 100%. Um, they did that back in week 6 against the Tennessee Titans. He practiced almost all week and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, he's going to probably play this week." And then last second, nope, we're not playing him because we're not 100% sure that he's good to go. Um, Kind of one of the unfortunate parts of his game is, if he's not 100%, it can mess up some things. And especially for a young quarterback that's still trying to figure it out, you don't want him to go out there feeling like he has to be somebody different than what he is. So, um, if I'd have to put my money on it, I'd probably say it's Flacco. I mean, no offense to you guys, but I mean, it is the Giants that we're facing. So, they're thinking, oh, Joe Flacco has shown a couple times this year that he's able to handle the offense enough to be able to do some things. And, you're facing a Giants team. You're already a 9-point favorite over them anyway. So, Joe Flacco, I think, could handle it enough with Jonathan Taylor being back and being 100%. And, you just keep him ready for the Jacksonville Jaguar game in a week from now. I mean, because honestly, you may not even need Anthony Richardson, honestly, because, and especially because you need two teams in front of you to have to lose for it to even matter in the first place. Um, but yeah, if I'd have to put my money on it, I'd probably say Flacco.
Yeah, and it's this week and next week, which the both opponents suck. Come out right and say that. So again, trying to match last year's record, try to sneak into the playoffs. Since his benching a couple of weeks ago, I thought it was an odd situation, but obviously you could give more clarity on it. Since his benching a couple of weeks ago, how has Anthony Richardson done in the games since he came back on the field?
He definitely looks like a much more polished quarterback. Nowhere near the finished product. There's still a lot more things that he needs to get better at, and with a lot more time, I think that will be better. But I think the main aspect of this is he looks more locked in. During games, you see him like instead of celebrating a lot more frequently when he's on the field, at least not when it's a big play. Like if it's a couple times where, he's gets a couple good plays, he's not really going to celebrate. He's going to get up, he's getting back to the line, telling guys to hurry up. I think he's a lot more in tune with what's going on in front of him, and it has allowed him to be a better quarterback. The percentage has gone up. I think the percentage has gone up like about 8 or 9% from what it was when he got benched, which I mean, at that point he was doing 44%. So I think he's in the low 50s now over these last few games, which is definitely a lot more feasible. Um, he seems a lot more in tune with it, and a lot more serious. And I think that was what Shane Steichen was telling everyone, was that we wanted him to start acting like a professional and start learning how to prepare like a professional rather than, as a kid. So, he had to do some soul searching, but ever since that benching, I mean, he has won quite a few games, and has even had fourth quarter comebacks to win some of those games, especially. So it has been very nice to see. Obviously, he's still got a lot of things to work on. His accuracy is still not even close to being where they want it. And sometimes his decision making, he's a little bit behind on a couple of decisions that he makes. But in the grand scheme of things, Steichen has also moved the game plan around to make it easier for him. So they're doing the QB runs, which allows him to utilize his strength. It kind of gets him in the game a little bit more, and it kind of, gets his body in a way where he feels more comfortable. A guy that big, he's used to getting, bullied around and everything. So I think he kind of enjoys being hit. Kind of something about it just makes his arm feel a lot better. I have no idea why, but it's just what he is. So it's definitely been great to see him over the last few weeks transcend into a little bit different of a quarterback, but he's still got a long ways to go.
Yeah, definitely, and definitely a maturity standpoint in terms of him. The last question I'll ask about Richardson before we move on to a couple of different things is, I don't know particularly if some of the injuries he's had over the last few weeks and even last year have gone to the fact that he's a running quarterback as well. Do you think he'll need to calm some of that down in order to be more durable over the next few games, the next few years?
Yeah, that's just such a difficult task to think about because every fan would want Anthony Richardson to kind of chill out on running the football, right? Because every time Anthony Richardson tends to run the football, you have an opportunity for somebody to accidentally hurt you or hurt yourself. And you never really want to put yourself in harm's way. Um, Lamar Jackson does stuff like that all the time, but Lamar Jackson doesn't take big hits because he's so shifty, he's so agile, he's so small. It's harder for guys to get him. Uh, but with Anthony Richardson, you're so much bigger, and every hit that you take is going to toll a little bit more in your body. It's kind of like Rob Gronkowski was, why Rob's career didn't go longer, because after a while, that big body and the hits tally up. It's definitely something that the Colts have to monitor, but it will never be something that will be out of Anthony Richardson's game. You can't simply tell Anthony Richardson to not run the football. And it's one of those that's going to be a part of the Colts game plan. But one thing he has to learn to continue to do uh, is continue to just not get put in harm's way. Continue to slide, continue to get out of bounds, take as few hits as humanly possible when you do run. And he has gotten better at that since the benching, hasn't taken as many dramatic hits, which has allowed him to stay healthy for the most part. I honestly have no freaking idea why he might not be playing at all anyways. I don't understand, because he played all the game the last week, and all they keep saying is that he's just sore. I don't know what that means, but clearly they're taking their time with him there. But, that might be a thing for a good chunk of Anthony Richardson's career. That might be a thing that Indianapolis Colts fans are probably just going to have to get used to.
Yeah. So moving forward from the outside looking in, I thought the Colts had a decent draft. Obviously, Adonai Mitchell, Leatu Latu in the first round. Funny story is when we were down at the Senior Bowl, I actually got to interview Tanner Bortolini, but unfortunately the audio was screwed up. That's modern technology. One of the three interviews that ended up getting screwed up, but nonetheless, Tanner Bortolini has also been a contributor. What are your thoughts on the progress of the draft class?
Well, yeah, Liatu Latu to start it out. He was definitely a very hyped up player for the Indianapolis Colts. Um, he's had the most pressures of anyone from this defensive line so far this year. It just hasn't translated as much into sacks. He's going to have to definitely get better at that. Um, Adonai Mitchell, very interesting there because in training camp was killing everyone. Like when it came to our corner room, when it came to the Cardinals corner room, the Bengals corner room, was destroying everyone. Like, I mean, there was no one that could guard that man one on one. He gets a lot of separation. A lot of times though, it just hasn't translated to catches. Body control, pinpointing the ball, better hands, all of these different things have been an issue for Adonai Mitchell so far this year. Um, Reggie Wayne, the wide receiver coach for the Colts, has supreme confidence that as the years go on, Adonai Mitchell is going to get acclimated to the game and he's going to eventually start turning some heads. Just right now, he's just not there. He just isn't quite locked in yet with everything, but we'll have to give him some time. Yeah, the two linemen that we did draft after that, Matt Gonsalves and Tanner Bortolini, as unfortunate as it's been this year with the offensive line getting as injured as it has, Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves have had to play a lot of minutes. And honestly, that's kind of a good thing because Gonsalves and Bortolini, you drafted them, and a lot of people were starting to think, hey, these guys might be replacements for some of these offensive linemen that you got, these aging offensive linemen that you guys have. Braden Smith is about to be 30. Ryan Kelly is 32. So you got some guys that are starting to get up into their 30s, and who knows how much longer they're going to be playing. So, to bring guys like that in and get them acclimated. Again, I wish that the offensive line would have been more healthy all year. But Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves have been very, very good at stepping in during those times. Bortolini's been especially good at center, and Gonsalves being able to go from left tackle to right tackle all over the field. It's been really, really good. And I couldn't be happier to see, those guys doing what they're doing. Why you draft guys from Pittsburgh and Wisconsin, man. They're O-line central over there. Outside of that, there's really not been a whole lot more of this whole draft class to begin with. Anthony Gould, who I thought was going to be a special team superstar this year. I mean, just this last week has finally started getting returns, and he's been a healthy scratch all year. I don't understand why, but he has been. And Jalen Carlisle, who just now is coming back, who's playing linebacker for us, he had to deal with a bunch of injuries, so we just haven't really seen a lot more of everybody else.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about the O line, this is more of a personal wanting to know question. Mark Lewinsky made his way back to the Colts this year. How has he come along since returning a few weeks ago? I believe it was against New England.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks was exceptional, or I think no, it was actually the first week he came back against New England, did very good. Um after I don't even remember who we played after that. I think it was against the Broncos. Did not play very good. But then again, half the offensive line didn't either. Um, and then this last week, the Indianapolis Colts rushed for over 300 yards. So, I mean, he obviously couldn't have been that bad. But yeah, it has been very good that Mark Lewinsky has come in, former Indianapolis Colt, and, has really made it home here. Um, we had Will Fries, who was playing at an all pro level when he went down in week 5, which is super unfortunate. The Colts have been trying so many different ways to figure out that right guard spot, and it's been killing them up until we got Mark Lewinsky. And, for 2 out of the 3 weeks that he's been here and has been able to play, he's been pretty dang good.
Yeah, good to hear. Definitely. So moving to the defensive side of the ball, pass defense. I think they're ranked in the high 20s at least. The secondary statistically seems to be okay. Are the stats bending the truth, or do teams not choose to pass against you guys because the alternative, which is running the football, provides more results for them?
Um, it's been a weird mixture. I don't know what to make of this defense this year. There are some games where like against Denver where I think we gave up like 195 yards of offense, which is unheard of for the Indianapolis Colts because a week prior to that, you gave up like 400 yards of offense against the New England Patriots. This has always been a bend but don't break defense. Um, they allow yards, they keep everything in front of them. They try to avoid the big play, and they just try to keep you out of the end zone. But with that, they allow a lot of the underneath stuff. They give up yardage and drives sustain against the Indianapolis Colts defense. So it's not an overreaction. We have a system in place where, you know, that's just kind of how our defense rolls out. And because we don't have elite linebacker play right now, or elite corner play right now, it's it's been very difficult for this Colts defense to get really any kind of rhythm going. So yeah, as far as how bad the Colts defense has been, yeah, they've been as bad as advertised, honestly.
And I would say that they've probably been worse in the running game.
Yeah, as compared to years past, yes. Um, it's gotten better at the end of this year. Um, the reason it's so bad to begin with is because we gave up in the first 2 weeks of the season. We gave up almost 500 rushing yards in the first 2 weeks. So they were already far and above and beyond the worst rushing defense in the entire NFL through the first couple weeks of the season. And albeit we've definitely gotten better at stopping the run, it's certainly not been an amazing feat either. So, yeah, teams have been able to run the football against the Indianapolis Colts. Um, and if you've been able to do that, then yeah, there's just we haven't been able to really stop anyone if they do that.
For the X Factor portion of the show on Sunday, one offensive X Factor for the Colts and one defensive X Factor for the Colts.
Uh, One offensive X factor. Well, I think that the X factor outside of the obvious of Jonathan Taylor is probably going to be Josh Downs. Uh, the Colts pass offense a lot of times goes through Josh Downs at this point. Not Michael Pittman, not the guy that you signed to a $23 million contract. No, it's the second year player out of North Carolina that has stapled himself as the number one wide receiver in this offense right now. So he definitely is the X factor on the offense. X factor on defense is probably going to be Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore, I think over the last 2 weeks has had 3 interceptions, or it might even be 4, honestly. So he has been all over the field recently. Seems to really be locked in. And if you don't know where Kenny Moore is, you're definitely going to struggle.
And then looking at the Giants side, if needed to game plan against them, of course. Uh, an offensive X factor for the Giants and a defensive X factor for the Giants.
Oh, you're asking me for the Giants ones?
Yeah, if you were looking to like if you were game planning or you asked the Colts to stop somebody, who would it be on offense and defense?
Well, I will definitely say, I mean, who is even your quarterback right now? Because I haven't even asked that question.
It's Drew Lock.
Oh, okay, I
Unfortunately,
thought I heard somebody say that he wasn't going to play.
nah, he looks to be. He had an MRI after the Falcons game. He
Mhm.
is supposedly going to play against the Colts.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so for that, I mean, I feel like the number one answer is always Malik Neighbors. Just mainly due to the fact that the Colts seem to always find a way to let the number one target do something to them. But I will say this, if there is one guy that I would be concerned about, it's Daniel Bellinger. And the reason why I say that is because the Colts have been notoriously bad at stopping tight ends. Notoriously bad. And because we leave the middle of the field open a lot. And that could be where Bellinger shines in this game. If the Giants are smart, they'll go with a lot of check downs, and they'll go with a lot of really quick curl routes in the middle of the field for Daniel Bellinger all game long, and you will move the ball down the field. As far as your X factor, uh, let's just say let's just say Kayvon Thibodeau, because I think that because there's a sour taste from a lot of Colts fans
Yep.
and a lot of Colts players from the last time that you guys played us, where he was doing a snow angel celebration on Nick Foles's corpse after he just annihilated him. And for some reason, our offensive linemen decided that they weren't going to retaliate against him. I feel like there's some loose ends and some sour feelings from some of that. So I'd probably go with that.
Very, very inventive, but actually well thought out answer. And then finally, where can people find you and what you do?
Yeah, my podcast is at BTJ Pod. Anywhere that you guys listen to your podcast, that's either YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever, doesn't matter. We are on all of them. You can find us on X at BTJ Pod. You can also follow me on Twitter at Derek_larger.
Well, we appreciate, per usual, Derek coming on and giving us the Colts perspective ahead of this weekend. I know what's going. Well, at least I think I know what's going to happen. I think the Colts will definitely take this game and hopefully for themselves try to sneak that way into the playoffs. Because last year, I think you guys just missed it. If I was mistaken, if I'm not mistaken,
As far you said for the playoffs.
yeah, last year
Yeah,
you guys just
we still have a chance, but it's only like a 15% chance at this point. So we need some luck. We need some luck, and the one and first thing that we have to worry about is winning out. So we don't win out, we don't make it in. So
yeah, of course. So we'll I guess the Giants will unless they do something stupid, we'll try to help you pull off the impossible. But once again, appreciate Derek coming on. Check out some of his podcasts, some of the stuff that he does, and also follow him on X. Like, comment, subscribe for this channel. Turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops video drops. Appreciate you guys coming back, and we'll be back on Tuesday for a recap pod of the Colts game and some big picture stuff. Appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you later.